Hey there, it's Michael. Welcome to Whole Again, the show that can help you navigate today's uncertainty with more mindfulness, resilience, and grace. And today, I have a first for you. I've never had the opportunity to interview partners in a relationship, but today we make it happen. In 2024, I interviewed Adam Pearce. He co-founded Love Your Brain with his brother, Kevin, who was an exceptional snowboarder, but had a horrific accident and suffered a TBI. And together, along with other amazing humans, have put together a beautiful foundation to help others recover, to heal again, to feel whole again, after TBI, traumatic brain injury, through mindfulness and resilience and the power of community. All things that speak to my heart, to my mind, to my body. So I simply loved my conversation with Adam. I'll put that conversation, a link to it, in the show notes. And it's turned out to be a wonderful relationship that I have with Love Your Brain. In fact, I joined them last year in 2025 for the 5-borough bike ride through New York City. It's the day where bikes take over New York. From my perspective, it's simply awesome sauce. Now, I will say not every New Yorker feels the way I do about the event. I saw a couple friendly New York waves, if you catch my drift, during the event, because traffic was blocked. People couldn't cross the streets the way they wanted to. But still, it's an awesome event. And I would love to see you do it this year with us. There's still time to register. And speaking of registering, Love Your Brain is doing their first ever summit. It's March 20th through 22nd. And I wanted to sit down with Kyla Pearce to understand more about what they're offering through the summit. As background, if you don't know my story, back in 2001, when I had my most significant bike crash, I also experienced a concussion or a TBI. But back then, we knew very little compared to what we know today about how to properly care for TBI. In my particular case, my medical team was most focused in on all my orthopedic and vascular injuries. And they didn't do much, and I throw no shade their way, in terms of treating my TBI. Now, luckily, I've been able to make a pretty remarkable recovery. And in my conversation with Kyla, we discuss what it really means to heal from a TBI. Not just medically, but really holistically. We talk about nature as medicine, as you know. That's a big deal for me. We talk about the science behind yoga and mindfulness for TBI care and healing, and how it can improve our interoception, our awareness of what's happening within the body, and how community could be, although I like to think it is, the most powerful form of healing available to us. So if you've ever had a TBI of any severity, or are caring for someone who has, or just wish to learn more about this invisible epidemic, this summit and our conversation is for you. So if you're ready, take a healthy breath in and a relaxing breath out. Settle in and get to know Dr. Kyla Pearce. Kyla, welcome to Whole Again. It's great to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, Michael. It's a joy to be here and to be in conversation with you.
Let's start here. One thing I deeply believe in is that nature is medicine. So when you think of a place in nature that helps you feel grounded and stable, where is that place for you?
A few come to mind, but I think one I'll share that has a particular meaning for me is my backyard.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm very fortunate to live in Vermont, and I live with my partner and our 3 kids, and our backyard looks over a kind of small field that's shared between a few houses with this backdrop of a pretty, um, what's the word to describe it? It's not an exceptional forest, but to me, when I was learning about the quality of equanimity, this always reminds me of equanimity because it's a place where I feel there's no specialness to it, but it brings me this feeling of familiarity and care. So that's
Mm.
it has a special place for me in that way.
I so appreciate that feeling of equanimity as well. And Vermont has a special place in our hearts. We almost moved there, my wife and I, back in 95 and 96, but we spent 13 years vacationing up in Highgate Springs, which is well north of Burlington, only a couple miles south of the Canadian border, with our family. So Vermont has so many wonderful memories for us. It's a special place also in our heart.
Please come and have a cup of tea and we can.
Yes, that would be great. That would be great. I have to come up because now, like, this has never happened before where I've been able to sit down with two partners, So I had a chance to chat with Adam at the end of last year, I think, or like it sort of blends, or actually 2024. The years are blending in my mind. And we talked about his work. We talked about how Love Your Brain was started. But I also know that not everyone listens to every episode and not everyone remembers every episode. So I would love for you to share your involvement with Love Your Brain and maybe it might be a repeat for people that heard my conversation with Adam, but what's the mission of the organization?
And it's actually maybe fortuitous timing because we recently evolved our mission slightly. So this will
Oh,
be
wow.
fresh
Okay.
for all of
Oh,
the.
this will be fresh for me too. This is awesome.
So if for those of you who may not have heard of Love Your Brain, we're a national nonprofit that has been around for about 10 years. And our mission is to improve the lives of, let me pause, actually, that was our old mission. So we are dedicated to improving the mental, physical, and social well-being of people with brain injury and caregivers. And our vision is to create a world where people impacted by brain injury feel more connected, resilient, and able to access a pathway to holistic well being. We were founded, as Michael shared, by my husband, Adam Pearce, and his brother, Kevin Pearce, who was a professional snowboarder. He had a very severe traumatic brain injury right before the Winter Olympics, just about 15 years ago. And that led our family down a very different path. So at the time, I was dating Adam, but had been very close with the Pearces for many, many years. And none of us had ever heard of a traumatic brain injury before. So it was a very steep learning curve for all of us. And in the kind of process of Kevin relearning what life was going to be like for him and our family, a few things happened. A documentary was made because Kevin had a lot of visibility as a professional athlete called The Crash Reel. Some of you maybe have seen this film, but it brought a lot of visibility to one family's experience with brain injury and really compelled Adam and Kevin to look at what were some of the learnings that they had and how might that be able to be translated to something bigger to build really an organization and an ecosystem where anyone impacted by brain injury can access ongoing resources to support their mental, physical, and social well-being, knowing that ongoing access to care and community is so hard to access for many, many people living with brain injury. So I've been involved from the very beginning through kind of some various different initiatives. Right now, my role within the organization is I oversee our programs and our research and our operations. So have been very involved mostly in the program development side of things. And I come as a yoga teacher, mindfulness teacher, and also a research background. I did my postdoc at Dartmouth College looking at the effectiveness of yoga interventions for TBI and have really tried to use the learnings from our family to help evolve programming that we can make more accessible to now thousands of people across the world.
I love the evolution of the mission. It actually speaks music to my hooligan ears because it's so holistic.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And we, at the very beginning of Love Your Brain's founding, our mission was to improve the quality of life of people impacted by brain injury, which of course is a noble mission, but it's quite broad. Part of that was intentional as we were trying to learn from the community what could Love Your Brain uniquely do to support the healing journey. And since 10 years have passed, we've gotten more clear on what that is. And I'm happy to speak more specifically about our programs. But that led us to kind of narrow our focus to looking at those dimensions of health.
I think it's so wise how you tapped into your community and really listened to them on what they needed from Love Your Brain. And I see your work as, yes, embracing community, but also meeting each person where they're at. Because as we go through the healing process from really any type of injury, and in particular TBI, it's a bit of a recipe or a special formula. Not every TBI can be treated the same way. Not every modality works the same way for everyone. So I love the fact that you are still embracing community and the power it provides, but also setting up programming to meet people where they're at so they can individualize, if you will, their own healing journey.
And I'm curious what you think about this, Michael, because at least in our experience and kind of piggybacking on what you shared, each TBI is individualized and requires this collaboration between what feels right for the individual, what resources are available, what are the medical protocols, and then what are some of the emerging kind of holistic approaches that may not have a strong scientific background yet. But there are shared needs in that because brain injury is so complex, impacts people cognitively, physically, psychologically, socially, it does require this kind of holistic way of looking at how to support healing. So that to me is the mystery and great kind of inspiration that comes with a TBI is we're all forced to really look at what are the different ways that comprise a sense of well-being, and it's not one thing, and they all at different times may feel more or less accessible but need to be attuned to. And that's what our programs are hopefully trying to do, or at least create more spaces where people can investigate that for themselves.
I know personally, I would have appreciated that so much as I was trying to heal from my TBI. As I mentioned up front, the doctors really didn't focus in on that. They were more concerned with my orthopedic and vascular injuries. So having a wide range of modalities of treatments that could possibly help would have been so valuable to me, especially around the potential value of mindfulness and yoga. And what makes me so encouraged about your evolution is that you can help us make even further progress. In my own personal experience, in the early years of my recovery, after I did find the practice of mindfulness, I would talk to my physicians about how I would use it to manage my pain, and they all thought I was a little bit like out there. During one of my last procedures, when it came to the pre-surgery checklist, the questions that they ask every patient, one section was all about how do you plan to manage your pain? And mindfulness was listed as an option. And it did a little happy dance because I was like, okay, we made a lot of progress. And it was just a happy moment for me. And I know Love Your Brain, along with other organizations, have helped us make great progress in our knowledge on TBI and ways to treat it most effectively. And as we sit down together today, we're only a few days away from the Super Bowl as well as the Winter Olympics. And this goes back a few years, but there used to be a much, I think, louder conversation about concussions in football. Now, maybe it's become a little bit more mainstream. A player gets hit hard, they go into that blue tent. But I felt much more of a public debate around the safety of football, the safety in sports in general, because kids who play soccer also get concussed quite frequently. But now it seems to be, I guess, normal, but not really talked about. So I'm curious, knowing that you've all made great progress, what's still not completely understood about TBI and concussions?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important question. And the USBIA, the kind of large umbrella organization for advocacy around brain injury in the US, commissioned a national survey, I think last year, which found that there was actually a higher reported incidence of TBI in the population than are reported on kind of CDC emergency room department self-reported measures. So, they found 4 in 10 people experience a concussion to other form of brain injury in the U.S. a year. So, 40% of
Wow.
our population have
Holy
experienced
cow.
a
That's
head
huge.
injury. But then what they found was that only 1 in 4 healthcare providers ask people if they have any symptoms or experience of a head injury in the past. So, to your point around we've made progress with awareness, and there's still a lot of work that can be done, certainly in the medical field where people are getting under misdiagnosed a lot and then not able to be linked up to effective resources and medical support. And I think, yeah, the advocacy organizations like the USBA are doing a great job, and the funding world is limited. So it's challenging. It's really challenging knowing that some of your listeners may know this. TBI is considered an invisible epidemic. I mean, it's
Yes.
of epidemic proportions, but because it is often invisible on the outside, physically, someone you may not looking at you right now, or my brother-in-law, Kevin, you'd never know they had that kind of history. So I think because of that, it can also undermine progress and really taking it seriously.
Well, speaking of taking things seriously, I did not mention this to Adam when we first sat down, but when I first discovered Love Your Brain, I reached out to a few of my friends who have also suffered TBIs. As a cyclist, unfortunately, I know too many people who have. And when I reached out to one of them in particular, I was like, hey, do you know Love Your Brain? And he popped back an answer that was very much grounded in Western medicine. He thought you all were a little bit too woo woo. It wasn't serious. The science wasn't rigorous. Now, I know through the practice of mindfulness that the science is there. And also, as a yoga practitioner, or at least someone who does something that might look like yoga, that there are also great health and wellness benefits of yoga. And for you as a teacher, as a practitioner, and through your advanced studies, I would love for you to share a bit more about how yoga can be beneficial.
I think what you're naming really speaks to the cultural misperception of what yoga is for understandable reasons. You often see in the media people doing these very elaborate headstands and physical postures that just are not accessible to the vast majority of people. So I think what's a couple of things are important here. So, first, yoga as a century old practice is, as you were mentioning, has 8 different limbs. And I won't get into too much of the detail of these, but it certainly involves a movement side called asana. So there's a movement piece, there's a breath work and meditation piece. So really thinking about how the mind-body connection requires both an entry point through our physical practice, a nervous system-based practice through meditation and breath work. There's also this idea of pratyahara, so turning your attention away from kind of sense inputs to build a more sense of groundedness and inward focus. And then there's that kind of ethical dimension as well. So some kind of guiding principles to help you really relate to yourself and the world in a more aware and compassionate way. So certainly there's thousands of years of it being a wisdom practice, and there's a lot of empirical evidence in kind of more of the model that we're familiar with in Western science that shows that yoga has many potential benefits for specifically brain injury, but also, of course, many other chronic conditions. And I think for those of you who are listening to this, yoga, I'll share a little bit of the research, and then I'm curious to hear, Michael, if you have any follow-up questions. But one, I think that can be really helpful for people with brain injury. There was a study that's called a meta-analysis. So it pulls together many studies that have been conducted and pools the results to be able to look at more kind of valid inferences. So there was a meta-analysis conducted, I bet by now, in 2 or 3 years ago, so relatively recently, that looked at 20 studies. Some are randomized controlled trials, some were other study designs, specifically at yoga or mindfulness-based interventions for concussion and persisting post-concussive symptoms. This included about 500 study participants, and what they found was that yoga had the most significant improvements in mental fatigue and depression, which I find very interesting because mental fatigue is kind of more, there's certainly a cognitive, but also a physical component to that. And then depression being a mental health condition that affects many people with brain injury. And there's been some interesting newer research that yoga and mindfulness as practices of awareness, when you're building more interoceptive awareness, so sensing how you feel internally, which can often be disrupted after a brain injury, that predicts symptoms of depression. So people who have depression who are not connected to how they feel in their body aren't able to use that information to then help discern a bit more of what action needs to be taken. So that kind of numbing creates this vicious cycle of feeling more and more depressed. So that's just one kind of mechanism around how yoga works. But I think this idea that there's many different kind of doorways into the practice.
I know for me, my yoga practice really did help me feel, I would say, safe, grounded, stable within my body. Given one of my injuries was nerve damage through my left leg. So my left foot, I never really felt connected to it because the sensations I felt from the sole of my left foot always felt a bit dampened or muted. So I never really felt balanced. I was always a little shaky. Through my practice of yoga, I was able to make a stronger mind, body, heart, soul connection, but it also helped me improve my balance. And it just, quite frankly, helped me feel like I fit in my body. And fast forward to current day with all the uncertainty in the world, I feel like my yoga practice today just helps me feel, I guess in a word, secure. If I feel safe in my own body, which then helps me navigate the uncertainty of today, because at least I can trust my body. If nothing else, I can trust my body. And I think that's some of the power that mindfulness and a yoga practice can provide.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the beautiful aspects of practices like yoga and mindfulness is that it's empowering us with tools for where to place our attention. And is the attention around noticing how the connection of our feet feel to the floor and borrowing a little of that source of steadiness. Quite simple, but cultivating that can be a reminder when, especially after brain injury, ruminating thought patterns come through around worry, anxiety, what ifs. So using the body and the kind of, it's called bottom up, our sensory experience to help remind us that there can be a sense of steadiness can be really powerful. And then also placing attention, for instance, for us within Love Your Brain programming, all of our programming has a community aspect to it. So how does practicing yoga in a community not only connect you with yourself, but then build a deeper sense of shared connection when you're doing it with others, and how reciprocal that is.
I just love that you shared this because I think this has been lost over time in this individual pursuit of self-help or healing, that we forget or we've forgotten the community. Going back to the Buddhist underpinning, there's a word, as you know, Sangha, which means community. And when I came up with my Pause, Breathe, Reflect app, that has a ton of meditations in it. But one aspect of it was that we were going to do live practices together And we still do those. We now do those through Zoom via Substack, because I think it's important to be in the same space, to be in the same circle. That's why I love going to silent retreats, because you're in it with each other. And when you practice together, there's a different energy. And there's also an understanding that, oh yeah, you too, you're going through something too. And with that, I think we can offer each other more compassion. And then it puts us in a position to offer ourselves self-compassion. And that is essential when it comes to healing and really stepping into the fullness of who we can be.
So powerfully said. And it's true. Like, there's no pill for community. This is not something the medical system can offer. It really has to be created by spaces where people feel a sense of steadiness within themselves, but also an ability to be vulnerable and build a sense of connection through being true to what's difficult and also what's joyful, and then
Yeah.
build. I think one thing that I find very powerful in Love Your Brain programs is because we have so many people coming in from a place of like feeling very broken and really marginalized and ostracized from life is so different. The mirroring that happens when people come together and the reminder of each other's goodness is really powerful. And sometimes it's hard to see that for yourself if you're feeling like you're in a really dark place, but to have
Yes.
other people name, I so appreciate you listening to my story. Like, even that sense that I am needed and there's an exchange happening makes somebody feel like, all right, there's worthiness here.
There is such great power in being seen. One thing I do through our metta or loving kindness meditations that we do every Friday is that 3 mantras are, may you be seen, may you be heard, may you be loved. And I think we all need that. I think it's a basic need to feel appreciated. So I love the fact that you referenced it. One thing I forgot to ask you, as you referenced the meta-analysis study, can you send me a link to that study? Because one of my missions for 2026, no one asked me to do this. This is one of my little things, is to help people have more discernment with studies, because so often, and I'm not saying you guys do this because you guys are actually putting out good science, but on the internet, there's often gurus or influencers that talk about this study said this, and you should take this or do that. But when you actually look at the science is not that rigorous. It's actually quite flimsy or poorly designed, or they're making false conclusions from the data. So I really want us to be more grounded in good science and that discernment, so we can be better educated on the steps that we can take to live a more meaningful and healthier and fulfilling life.
I can definitely share that. And I think to your point around the value of science and really changing the cultural perception of why a practice like yoga or mindfulness could be helpful is there has been a boom in research focused in these areas, some of which is quality and some of which is a little less so. And I think for your listeners who may be curious about this, the Helen Wang is also an interesting researcher who's studied specifically metta or compassion-based meditations, and she's looked at different brain regions in the brain that are more active during metta practices versus other styles like a more focused awareness practice, and has found different, like, meaningful activation in different regions of the brain. For instance, the insula, which governs our sense of empathy.
Yeah.
So there's kind of neural mechanisms that now that we have the ability to measure the kind of underlying ways these practices are influencing us on a physiological level, there's a lot of interesting research coming out that is showing what yoga practitioners for thousands of years have felt through a lived experience, but now we have more empirical methods for measuring. Not always, but sometimes. But
Yeah.
the point of like the shift, I think, away from woo-woo practices, especially in the medical system, is, for instance, mindfulness-based stress reduction programs, really championed by John Kabat-Zinn, Now, there's thousands of randomized control studies looking specifically at that intervention and finding a lot of potential benefit. But as we were talking about earlier, not always. So it still really needs to be taken at an individualized, like, exploration approach.
I completely agree. And I love the reference to John and MBSR. I went through the whole teacher pathway with MBSR, and I was that annoying kid in class that always asked about why is the practice 45 minutes a day? Because of my background in pharmaceuticals and in medicine, we focused a lot of our conversation around what the proper dose was. So I kept on asking and asking and asking, and the answer I got back was, in essence, this was the practice that John brought back into the States. But if 45 minutes doesn't do it for you, 44 minutes might do the trick. So I've taken that, I've played with it in my own way because I felt that 45 minutes can be too long for folks to stay consistent with the practice. So I'm a big fan of micro practices with some level of frequency, a length of time, if you will, where you can do it consistently every day and you can weave it into your life. So I love the reference to John and MBSR, but I think I have a reputation in that community of always asking about, why is it 45 minutes? What's the proper dose, if you will? I would love to take our conversation now from MBSR to your summit, which I think it's your first summit ever. It will happen on March 20th through 22nd, virtually or online. And I have to say, you have an impressive lineup of lectures and speakers on a whole host of different topics, ranging from emerging treatments to evidence-based medicine. I love the fact that you are speaking directly to mindfulness, but through the lens of trauma sensitivity. I do believe in today's age that people who are interested in a mindfulness practice and meditation should seek out teachers who have been trained in trauma sensitivity, because mindfulness is wonderful, but it's not for everyone, as is any therapy. There isn't a single approach to treatment that works for everyone. So I love the fact that you have a wide range of speakers, great diversity, and a great diversity of topics. But I would love for you to put some voice to the summit and what people should expect to experience by attending.
Well, I think you perfectly segued from the John Kabat-Zinn kind of inquiry, because I think the summit sits at this exact nexus of science and lived experience. So the Love Your Brain Summit, Advancing the Science and Practice of Holistic Healing, is the kind of full event name. So it'll be a 3-day online event that is bringing together 13 experts in a range of different holistic health approaches that have either they all are science-based, but some of them are a little bit more emerging in that there's strong theoretical underpinning, but maybe there's not a large pharmaceutical company who's kind of championing
Yes.
expertise to kind of pump this into the next like biomedical thing. So the idea here is, we know people with brain injury often feel quite, maybe not failed, but there's limits to the way that the medical system can support long-term healing, mentally, physically, socially, cognitively. So the idea here is, an all-in-one 3-day event, how can we bring together people who are experts in the field that can really speak to and unpack both the research, but really experiential practices, so that people can feel for themselves, for instance, what is a trauma-sensitive mindfulness practice? Not just the idea of it, but what is it?
What is it? Yes.
I can take this tool and weave it into my life, so that if I'm feeling dysregulated or overwhelmed by stress, I have a small thing that I can do myself to help regulate. So that's just one example, but we have people in neurotherapeutics and photobiomodulation, gut-brain health and nutrition, practices and approaches that speak to those areas, but then also I'm really excited about some of you may have heard of Judson Brewer. He's a researcher out of Brown who does a lot of work around habit change and working with anxiety using mindfulness-based approaches and others. We have a really fantastic woman who's going to speak about acupuncture, but a bit more from the Western biomedical lens. So, looking at kind of nerve pathways and how acupuncture can help with headaches, cognitive fatigue, balance, and someone who will be talking about EMDR and how that can also be used to help with trauma as well as other aspects of TBI. So that's just like a smattering of some of the different topics. So we have others, but we're also really thrilled to have Trevor Hall coming, and he'll be singing a few of his tunes. He's been a support of Love Your Brains for many years, is an amazing musician, and really to also bring a kind of celebratory undertone to this, that this is not just about kind of information receiving, but it's really to celebrate the kind of seekers that brain injury can kind of thrust people into a need to become a seeker. So seeking more self-understanding, more kind of ways in which we can live well. And there's never complete answers to that question, but this celebrating that path, which can sometimes feel really daunting and overwhelming, but when we're together and can acknowledge that, but then also the amazing ability of our brains to heal and find new pathways to living well. So celebrating that process and the willingness for people to be seekers.
All of it sounds so good and so meaningful, valuable. I'm really eager to see how people will experience your summit, and I'm so thankful that you all decided to put this on and serve the community in this way. I think it's going to be a very special event, and you're going to touch a lot of people and hopefully create a powerful ripple effect that can benefit so many. So thank you for putting this together. I know I will be signing up to join. I will put the link in the show notes so other people can discover a bit more and sign up and join us. So again, thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, certainly. I'm really looking forward to this and feel like it's going to be energizing on many different levels. So thanks for helping us. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, is there anything I should have asked you, but I didn't ask you?
I don't think so. I can send you, I didn't really speak to Love Your Brain specific research, but I'm happy to send a link to that if people are interested in those resources. And yes, just really appreciate everyone's time and curiosity. So much power
Yeah.
there.
Well, thanks for coming on Whole Again, and best of luck with the summit. And I'll put any link that you wish to share, I'll put in the show notes, and so people can get that information. So may our practice together benefit all living creatures. So it's great to be with you.
Thank you. You too, Michael.
If anything resonated with you from my conversation with Kyla, especially around healing, mindfulness, movement, and of course, their summit, I will encourage you to check out Love Your Brain. I'll put the link to the summit and their website so you can learn more about them. But I'm really hoping you'll sign up for their summit to learn more about how you can care for your TBI or provide better care to someone else, or perhaps just enhance your overall knowledge, because this is something so many of us are dealing with, and it's quite invisible. So if you're just curious and wish to explore and enhance your knowledge, I'll encourage you to sign up for the summit, because they're bringing together clinicians and researchers and practitioners who cover the spectrum between lived experiences, emerging methodologies, as well as evidence-based care. How they've set this up is a powerful reminder that healing isn't one-dimensional. We all have our own recipe or formula, and you certainly don't have to navigate it all alone. because ultimately, together, we go far. And speaking about going far together, I hope you'll join me over on Substack. My handle over there is called Milkshakes with Michael. There you'll find my writing as well as a live teaching to help you weave our practice into a natural way of living. And I host a few meditations each week over there, so you can sit in community with others that also wish to put a beautiful ripple into the world. As always, thank you for being here and being part of our community. I hope to see you at Love Your Brain Summit. I'll be there, and maybe you care to join us for a nice bike ride through the streets of New York City. Until then, keep pedaling. I appreciate you. And if you wish to learn more about creating beautiful ripples and how to prevent a bad moment from turning into a bad day, please visit my website, michaelobrienshift.com, and sign up for my newsletter called The Ripple Effect. And join us each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here at Whole Again and discover how you can heal, grow, and become more resilient, and celebrate our scars as golden symbols of strength and resilience. Until then, remember, you can always come back to your breath. You've got this, and we've got you.